Hello, and welcome to Book Circle. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time we will continue our reading of Aunt Jenny and the Delayed Quest by Jim Burroughs. Aunt Jenny and her companions have worked their way out past the edge of the Halflands deep into Chaos Rim, there to seek and find the city of Lilith that she is using as a base wherewith to invade the Halflands, and then after them, any worlds she can. Chaos Rim is a place hungry to be shaped, something that is crucial to the events coming up. After a moment, Aunt Jenny, Queen and teacher, spoke softly, firmly. Remember, we are well into Chaos Rim. Focus and certainty, like that of the marginalia, is key. We can make this place do what we want, be what we want. It even wants to be dominated, as you said, Sasha. The crown gives me a serious edge, but it is true for each of us. Catching Sasha's eye directly, do you understand, my Amazonian champion? Yes, Aunt Jenny. And you, Morwenna? Yes, my queen. Where you lead, we can follow. Good. Now, about that city. Chapter 17, The Heart of Chaos. My city, human, came the icy voice from above. Jenny turned around to see a large, bat-winged figure floating in the air. She, for that's who it must be, the false Rahab, she who was once a dragon, mother of monsters, had hair as black as night, skin as pale as sun-bleached bone. She wore a breastplate of shiny black metal edged in blood red over a long black backless dress with billowing sleeves fashioned from layers of diaphanous black silk, shot with silver and decorated with embroidery as red as blood. A silver crown set with a blood-red ruby held back her long flowing hair. She hovered, motionless wings outstretched, supported magically in air that swirled with ripples and eddies of black mist. She sneered down at them. What of my city? Jenny smiled and forced herself to pace casually as she might at the front of a classroom, now catching the listener's eye, now looking past her, then back. Your city, not theirs? Aunt Jenny gestured to 3. I suppose you might see it that way. She nodded thoughtfully. It only makes sense that you should. Why, she reached a hand into her bag and found her commonplace book. But by the time that she had drawn it out, it was no longer the familiar, simple, cloth-bound journal, but a richly bound leather volume with brass fittings, shiny with frequent use. It says right here. Jenny concentrated and thumbed through the tome. But never mind, that's a mere digression. What should interest us, she closed the book and transferred it to the other hand. Reaching into her bag again as she paced beneath her gaze, she found her garden claw and smiled in quiet satisfaction. As she drew it out, she could feel it transform. The wooden handle lengthened, the claw's tines uncurled and reshaped themselves. It shifted, twisted, and grew until it became a long, gnarled wooden staff topped by a brass candelabra, looking rather like Lumiere from Disney's Beauty and the Beast. What should interest us in the light that the 3 stubby candles lit? Enough! Enough of this nonsense, commanded the mother of monsters. No more prattle and theatrics. Jenny could feel the overwhelming waves of compulsion from Lilith's geas. The crown burned icy cold on her head. She had no choice but comply, but perhaps she could choose how. Of course, as you say, she said, inclining her head and her eyes. She smiled. Exerting herself, she managed to force her gaze away, allowing it to fall once more upon the city. "You will address me as Your Majesty and bow before me," she commanded. Complying, Morwenna swept a long, elaborate, courtly bow. Sasha set her palm upon the hilt of the third sword and made a stiff, formal bow, one that Jenny hoped was evidence that she, too, was managing to resist. "Of course," said Jenny, as she and three inclined their heads together in apparently acquiescing nods, delayed and silent. Lilith glared, her red eyes fairly flaming. This was not the placid compliance she had known for millennia. "As I was saying, yes, Your Majesty." Jenny's words were coming slowly now as she struggled, sought distraction, postponing the demanded title. Her eyes avoided Lilith's. "What should concern us," she managed. Lilith fumed visibly and started to descend straight toward Aunt Jenny, whose eyes were still averted, focused in the distance. "Look at me," Lilith commanded. Aunt Jenny caught her breath, paused, exhaled, and, taking a carefully measured breath, let her gaze turn slowly toward Lilith. She smiled. "Of course," she said stiffly. The crown burned. She focused on the pain, embracing it, clung to it. "Of course, Your Majesty!" Lilith fairly screamed. Aunt Jenny leaned heavily on her staff and inclined her head once more in forced but overdramatic acquiescence, masking the effort as once again she broke off her gaze. Slowly, she stood back up straight, struggling as if her struggle was against a heavy burden. She glanced off into the distance and eked out a smile as she finally muttered, "Majesty," through gritted teeth. Well, she'd postponed saying that for quite a while. If she could no longer avoid the word, perhaps... She forced a smile. "Tea," she continued. The crown blazed with burning cold. "Majesty. A jest, a little joke. Majesty, Majesty." She was on a roll now, each sing-song repetition more voluntary, less compelled. "Majestic ruler of a falling city." There. Has-been dragon, dragon who once was, false Rahab, false queen, creature of death and darkness. Her breath was coming in short, heavy bursts from deep in her diaphragm, or deeper still. She was nearly her own self again, her crown an icy conflagration. "Watch your city fall and despair," commanded the Queen of Avalon. "I am come at last." Lilith turned with a jerk, and sure enough, behind her, the city in chaos was collapsing into the very chaos from which it had arisen. All around it, little specks were moving away and vanishing. As they all, Jenny, Lilith, Sasha, Morwenna, Three, and Big Tom, focused their attention on the city, it seemed to come closer and grow larger, as if they were seeing it through a lens. They could make out the tiny figures running marginalia, pursued by beastmen, leatherwings, dragons, and monsters, until in a short distance the little folk just vanished before their pursuers. One or two were struck down before they could escape, but on the whole they just faded away as they ran. All around them the city was collapsing, shaking, as if buffeted by a storm or earthquake, or, here and there, just fading to nothingness. It was chaos. Chaos claimed its own. "Your city is lost. You have no base. Your thralls escape. Queen of naught, feel the power slip away." Jenny stood even taller. Lilith turned to glare at Aunt Jenny, the upstart human queen defying her geas. Astonishment, hate, and death burned in her eyes. "I abjure you! I deny you!" Aunt Jenny heard herself saying, reciting words dimly recalled. She looked at the things in her hands and smiled. Instinct drove her, leaving her will and mind behind. By the prophecy that is written, she held up the leather-bound tome, by all that I know and all that I've read, she was panting now. I, the greater Jennifer, Jennifer of prophecy, last queen of Avalon, healer, teacher. She paused, her strength nearly gone. Cannot stop. I deny you. I cast you out to the outer darkness whither you belong. And with that, she reversed the leaden staff in her hands and let it fall forcefully down, driving the candles into the ground, extinguishing them. I take back what was mine, what was ours, what you have no right to. As the staff fell away, she reached out her hand toward the fairy crown, which leapt from Lilith's head and into her grasp. Somewhere a bell tolled, softly at first, then louder. She could not, must not stop. By bell, book, and candle I cast you out, false queen. Begone! Lilith screamed in rage and pain and vanished. Aunt Jenny collapsed in a heap. Wake up! Oh, please, Aunt Jenny, wake up! Came the words. She heard herself mutter. Her vision wavered horribly. She could barely make out Sasha looking down on her fallen form below, her allies arrayed around her. No, that's not right. She should be looking out from those fluttering eyes, not down at them. She closed her eyes, shook her head, opened them, and looked up at Sasha's worried face. That was better. Her head was pounding, burning. The crown, the one on her head, so cold, so burning cold, but warming. She started to reach up to touch it with her hand, but found that her fingers clutched a book. She was lying on the ground. Shouldn't she be standing? She struggled to sit upright. It's okay, my dear, she heard herself say. That would not do. She had to start speaking her words and not just hear them be spoken. I'm fine, she reassured. Sure, whatever you say, especially here. You the boss, Sasha smiled. Good, she said. She said. Herself. Good. That was better. Wow, that all was awesome, exclaimed Sasha. Where did that come from? From fear, abject terror. That was the mother of monsters. I knew we were lost unless something unexpected happened. I played for time to think of something, or maybe just postpone our demises. She had her back to the city, and I could see that something was happening there. If I could distract her, keep her from seeing it until it was too late to stop it, that would at least repair some of the damage. It seemed quite hopeless, but what would be more distracting and unexpected than attacking her? Then it came to me how to do that. They were sitting by the edge of the island's central pool. Aunt Jenny made little swirling patterns in the water with a finger. Slowly, she drew back her hand. The water continued to swirl where she pointed. Big Tom crawled into her lap. When she got angry and I found that I could resist her geas with the crown, it suddenly seemed less like a hopeless Hail Mary. I figured that I needed something to focus my attention on, and the bell, book, and candle seemed to give me that and a way to focus the attack. And you just happened to have a candlestick staff in your bag? It was my garden claw, she shrugged. Wooden handle, metal tines, it seemed like the thing to do at the time. Where in heck did the bells come from? Fantasia, the turning point of Bald Mountain. Big black bat-winged evil with glowing eyes and a troop of monsters. It seemed to fit. I imagined the sequence, the start of the Ave Maria, and made the tolling of the bells real. So you defeated her with some old movies and a repurposed Catholic excommunication? I was trying for the unexpected, and no one expects the Spanish Inquisition, they said in unison and laughed. It was out of place, but in character. Yes, she was definitely coming back to herself. If I may, Aunt Jenny, interjected Morwenna. Yes, she may not be gone forever. We must find a way out of here and plan our next moves. I've been thinking about that and more. Like what, Aunt Jenny? Asked Sasha. There are immediate issues, short-term and longer-term, that all need to be addressed. Getting out of here and doing it safely, that's short-term. Longer-term, we need to undo some of the damage that she has caused in the last 4 decades. And immediately? Well, it may not seem as important to you three, but I feel responsible for what happened here, to this place. She, as I said to her face, is a force of death, darkness, and destruction. We need to be a force for life, for creation. And so far, I haven't been too good on that count. So I want to fix things a bit, and I think I can do that in a way that will help us with our longer-term goals. Can you all go along with me on that? Sasha, Morwenna, and 3 all agreed. The peacats and kitties even took that moment to alight in the branches of one of the 2 trees on the island and murmured positively. Okay, we just had 2 victories, and they were tied to each other. I banished her for a time and stole back the crown. She looked down and saw the fairy crown with the serpent's eye lying at her feet. She paused, placed her book back in her bag, and fetched out the silken square in its place. Kneeling down, she gently retrieved the crown, wrapped it in the silk, and placed it in her bag. She stood, inhaled, and continued. But key to that was our other victory, saving the marginalia and destroying her city. She paused again and walked over to the nearby tree. After a little while, she reached into its branches before returning to her 3 companions. She held out her hand to them. There, crawling along her finger, was an insect, a walking stick, one made of real sticks and leaves. We owe that victory in no small part to this little fellow. It was seeing it, or one like it, that gave me the idea for the flying seeds, the seeds that enabled the marginalia to flee, collapsing the city. She knelt down by the pool. By breaking this area up into little isolated islands, I made it harder for these things, the pool, the tree, and so on, to survive. Life is interdependent. We need to fix the pieces I shattered today, or perhaps it would do better to say, heal them. How would we do that, milady? Asked Morwenna. You, my dear, could create one of your fireballs, a large one, a permanent one that can act as a small sun shining upon the trees and plants in this area. And, turning to the scout, she continued, you can help me find floating islands that fit back together and ones that have water dripping off them. We will pull them together, make this island bigger, and float the others into place where they water each other. And me, Aunt Jenny? Asked Sasha. Help me with either the gardening or the landscaping, whichever you're better at. With a concerted effort, they soon had a complex of floating islands that was extensive and looked like it might be self-sustaining. As the other 3 had gotten the knack of creating, nurturing, and moving things in chaos, Aunt Jenny set herself to 3 specialized tasks. In one of the trees, she found a spider-like creature spinning a web. She talked to it for a while, and soon there were a great many of its kind, all spinning out thread that she spun and wound into a ball. After storing the thread, she took out one of the small egg-shaped emeralds from the heart of Jinistan and started molding it like clay, turning it around her thumb until it was shaped like a small, round bottle. She filled the bottle with water from the pool, which was growing now, as streams fed by the waterfalls off the gathering islands flowed into it. Finally, she toured all the islands, talking to the trees. So far as anyone could tell, they did not talk back, but eventually she seemed to have found what she wanted and cupped her hands around a small seed hanging from the branch of one of the trees. As she whispered to the tree, the seed grew until it was the size of the pit of an avocado or a mango and dropped off into her waiting hands. She smiled, bowed to the tree, and put the seed into her bag along with the water and the thread. "There, I think I have what we need," she called out. "It's time to leave. 3, do you still have the seed that flew to you?" "Yes, lady." "Can you use it to return to Mother and take us all with you?" 3 thought for a while before nodding. "Hold hands," he said. They gathered together and called the pea felines to come sit on their shoulders. 2 did, landing on 3 and Aunt Jenny. The other pair remained in the tree. The pea-cat said, "We'll stay here in the garden. You have good minds and hearts. You can probably shape chaos enough to be a lot of help." The pea-cat and his mate smiled. "Yes," they said. Aunt Jenny turned to the pea-kitty on her shoulder. "And what of you two?" she asked. "We'll carry messages for you. Would you rather stay with them?" "Yes, milady, but you may need us." "No, stay with them. Tend the garden. And if the need is great, 1 or 2 of you may be able to fly home to us." "Thank you, milady," said the 2, and flew to join their fellows in the trees. 3 had retrieved the seed from his pocket and was smiling. They all joined hands, and once she had picked up Big Tom, she told 3, "Then lead us home." 3 started walking toward the edge of the island, but before he got there, he'd stepped out of chaos and onto the witch paths. A short distance further, and they emerged in a clearing surrounded by other marginalia, who, as soon as they saw the group step off the path, rang out a cheer. It was only moments before Mother presented herself before Aunt Jenny. "Good queen you are. Thank you. You returned so many of the people to me." She reached up and took Aunt Jenny's hands in hers, smiling with tears welling in her eyes. "Wow, just wow," said Sasha. "We made it. We're alive. They're all alive." "Yes," agreed 3 and Mother in unison. Amidst all the hoopla and excitement, Aunt Jenny just stood quietly, eyes closed, breathing deeply. "You done good, Jen," came a deep, soft tone that only she could hear, and she wept. And we will follow Aunt Jenny further into the consolidation of her victory next time.